Hey, welcome back to Wrestling Travel Presents the Lockdown Sessions. And today we are here with TJ Perkins. TJ, how are you doing today?
What's going on? Thank you very much for having me. It's a beautiful day outside. I'm having a good day. Yourself?
In sunny California?
I'm in Vegas right now, but I split my time half and half between here and California. I bought a house out here a few years back, so I don't know, 3 hours from where I grew up.
Okay.
So I kind of bounce between.
Well, I'm calling you from wet and windy Wisconsin today, so we kind of got the contrast here. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about our lockdown sessions. We're just kind of catching up with people. Obviously, we're in a different world right now. Wanted to kind of catch up and talk to you and see what you've been up to since the world has changed. What have you been doing to keep yourself busy during this time?
Well, I don't know. I think I've been kind of fortunate. I've basically not done anything different, I guess. A lot of my city out here in Vegas isn't really closed down in the same way. So for the most part, I can have a normal day. I still can go to the grocery store. I don't have to wear a mask or anything like that. Downtown is kind of closed up, but I don't really spend a whole lot of time going out. I mean, most of my day is usually playing video games or working out anyway. And I built a gym in my house a couple years back. And so I like, it's one of those things where, like, you know, in a movie where like a natural disaster could happen, but somebody was like in a coma. And then when they come out of it, like, they're like, whoa, what did I miss? And it's like everything. Like, for me, it's kind of like that. Like, if you didn't tell me that the world was going through, you know, all these different precautions and stuff, I kind of wouldn't know, because I don't really have to deal with it in context, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it makes. How about wrestling wise though? Obviously, you haven't been able to do
Um,
much.
like the schedule's been a lot lighter, obviously, but like a lot of my work this year, was going to be aimed towards Impact Wrestling in New Japan anyway, and I was going to kind of try to get into doing some training, which is a totally different gear shift for me. It's not something I ever thought I would do until I was an old man, but now I realize I'm starting to become an old man. So, you know, so like I still am able to do a lot of work with Impact Wrestling. I think New Japan's going to work on some taped studio style footage as well soon. So for me, I've probably wrestled like, I don't know, 5, 6 times since the, I guess, official lockdown started. So in a way, it's really been a lot no different for me, but I still find creative ways to kind of go out and spend my time, because I know that a lot of other people are going through like different like precautions. So you know, I kind of got into like cooking at home a little bit, and I put up like different training videos of like workouts I've done that like don't include going to like a normal gym. A lot of stuff on my Indo board, which is kind of like an indoor surfboard, balance board type thing. And a lot of people that like don't have, I guess, the same freedom of mobility right now, or like started to kind of get into it because they could see like what games I'm playing or like what workouts I'm doing. So in those ways, I've sort of like kind of experienced the lockdown a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of people getting into cooking at home. I had a buddy of mine ask me if I was eating healthy, and I said, absolutely, I'm eating much healthier, but now I'm eating like 2 or 3 times what a normal guy should be eating. Just
I
because
think it
it's,
goes like one way or the other, right? Like a lot of people now, they're like either cooking a lot and like eating more healthy at home, or they're just ordering Postmates all day with reckless abandon. So it's like pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So yeah, it there's a little bit of both, I guess.
absolutely. Now, I was going to back up in your career now. You've probably been asked this 1,000 times, but a young TJ Perkins, what first got you into pro wrestling? Like, who caught your eye when you were growing up, when you first kind of like got into professional wrestling? Was it
Um,
a particular
well,
wrestlers?
I don't know that there was any one particular guy. I was really fixated on Piper and Jake when I was younger. Um, I was born in '84, so I was an '80s kid growing up. So like my first memories of wrestling when I was 2, 3 years old was like that, you know, '85, '86, '87 era of guys. So that's kind of what I grew up on. So I was a big Hogan guy growing up too, you know, Ultimate Warrior as well. I remember being in school, my best friend and I, we didn't pass the ball to each other at soccer at recess for like 2 weeks because he was still a Hogan guy and I became a Warrior guy for like, you know, a couple of years. Like that's I guess an example of what I grew up with. And then as I got a little older, the guys that, because I started wrestling at an early age too. Like I started my career when I was 13. So when I got to be about 10, 11, 12, and I was watching a lot of Mexican wrestling and Japanese wrestling. And obviously I was still a WWF guy, but like these guys are actually the ones that were the ones that kind of really shaped who I am. So like I got Eddie's fire here from his tights, and Sean, obviously, Tiger Mask. And these three guys were like, I mean, they probably had the biggest influence on me stylistically and just like both in and out of the ring. Like they all went through really interesting things in their personal lives with their career, and like the way that they handled that sort of shaped me and helped me to mature in my own life and career, because I could see like what they went through and the same type of hardships or mistakes and things like
Yeah, I've never seen that tattoo. Very cool. I don't know if you've done like
that.
one
Yeah.
of those tattoo types things. I remember um, going on the old tape trader on the internet when it was new, and I getting the Tiger Mask Dynamite Kid Best of 7 series on VHS.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know what happened. I imagine I could find it on YouTube, but just way ahead of its time. Just
Yeah, no,
outstanding.
absolutely. I mean, that's really what kind of caught my eye. And I think because of that, you know, I really, you know, because that kind of led me to like the Super J Cup. And that's kind of how I was introduced to like Eddie. You know, for example, he was Black Tiger in the first J Cup. And like when I first started wrestling, I didn't have a WrestleMania moment. I was like a WWF kid, obviously growing up, but like I didn't, by the time I was getting into wrestling, I just wanted to go to CMLL and I wanted to go to New Japan because I wanted to be a junior and I wanted to be in the Super J Cup, and I didn't care about being in WrestleMania. So like those guys, like Tiger Mask, for example, Dynamite Kid, those are the guys that really like shaped my interest, and this is really what I want to do with my life.
Now, did I read correctly? You went when you were in New Japan when you first went over. Brian Danielson was among some of the other guys in there with you at the same time.
Yeah, my class. So when New Japan first opened up a secondary gym in Los Angeles, Inoki had a home in Santa Monica, so he opened up a gym there to expand the company, and we were part of the first, I guess, kind of draft class. WWF had a developmental at the time in Los Angeles. It was called UPW. It's where John Cena was, Victoria, The Miz, like that generation of guys. And I was in their class with them. I was only like, I don't know, 15, 16 years old. So I wasn't under contract. I was just good enough to be there. So it's kind of like I was like a scholarship kid. Like they weren't, you know, it'd be like if you put a 16-year-old, 15-year-old on NXT, but like you weren't going to call him up. Like he was just good enough to be on the shows, like that sort of thing. But they lost their developmental at one point, and they linked up with Zero One. And Zero One at the time was just split off from New Japan, and the Inoki family was helping build the groundwork for what they were doing. So they asked in the area. They said, we want to put some guys in this gym and open up New Japan extension. And so myself, Brian Danielson, the Havana Pitbulls, which is Ricky Reyes, Rocky Romero, were the first guys. And they also wanted Joe, but Samoa Joe had already gone over to Zero One. And at the time, times were very different back then in like 2000, 99. And you didn't trade talent like that. So he was kind of part of the gym, but he wasn't allowed, or rather they never used him in New Japan because of that reason. And then because of my age, the other guys were a lot older. So not a lot older, but they were like a very different older, you know, like they're in their early to mid 20s and I was a teenager. So they looked at me like I could be like a proper young boy prospect. So they wanted me to go live in Tokyo, like how Benoit did, or, you know, and any of the other guys that went through the dojo system. what Finn Balor eventually did was that's what they wanted me to do. So I eventually did that. But the other guys, they were old enough to kind of be stars right out the bat, or right out the gate. And so that, yeah, we went there together, and that was sort of how it just kind of happened really fast.
Very cool. When you actually get to the WWE, this is a question uh, I'm hoping that everybody else kind of wants to know too. The kind of the 8-bit video game song and graphics that you came out to, do you have any like say or input into that, or is that just something that they gave you
Oh,
kind of based?
no, yeah. When I finished the CWC, because in the Cruiserweight Classic, I remember there were two key creative points for anybody is like your entrance and like your music. And they gave me this like very like alt rock kind of like Florida rock music, and it was okay. It's just that's not really my style. And a lot of people really liked the song I had in the Cruiserweight Classic, but I had also I asked them for different music, and they said no at the time. And then I asked them if I could be announced representing the Philippines, and they said yes to that. So that was cool. But then when I went to Raw and I got called up, I won the championship. They said, okay, well, CFL Money's going to call you about your music, and I just said, okay, this is a clean slate. I'm going to be hands-on. So they let me kind of design everything. CFO called me. They said, do you like your music from before? And I said, no. And then they actually asked me, because they have a process. Like they say, okay, well, tell us some of your interests and, bands you like and songs and whatever, and we'll create something that's you. But I'm like, I think because people look at me and they think, okay, he's a young kid or whatever, but like I'm a lot older than people think, and so my like taste in the world is very like broad. So when they asked for that list, I'm like, I gave them the worst list of all time to create music from, because they were like, tell us who you like. I said, Elvis, Tupac, Blink 182, Nirvana, the Rolling Stones, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, like Chuck Berry, like none of it went together. So then they awkwardly were like, oh, okay, well, we'll work with this. And I just, maybe like 10 minutes later, I thought to myself, that's stupid. They can't do anything with that. So I called them back and I said, look, I'm trying to create a character that it's like Scott Pilgrim and like Ready Player One. So I said, that's the aesthetic I want to create. There's a generation of people like my age, like the mid-level adults. They're not super young adults, they're not older adults, they're not midlife yet. There's just a retro age that nobody's really tapped into that at the time. Now it's become this huge craze, but at the time, like just 5 years ago, nobody was doing that. I mean, Kenny Omega, maybe, like he was the closest thing. And so I said, this is what I want to create. And I really like Mega Man. Can you create Wily's Castle? They said, yes, we know exactly what you're talking about. And then, I went to the production guys and said, can you build the stage like this and just do these? I knew going in, I wasn't going to get fireworks or anything like that, or any kind of special effects, because you're just low on the totem pole. So I said, how can I turn that into a positive? And I said, what can they do that doesn't include all these bells and whistles that they're going to laugh at me for asking for? So I said, we could use the digital stage. So can you just create a video game environment? And they said, yeah, we could do that. That's cheap. That's free. We could just do that right here. And so they created it. The music went with it. And it was just the perfect storm.
Yeah, I popped when I first saw it because it was cool because I'm an old school Nintendo, Super Nintendo kind of guy, simply because I lack the dexterity in my hands to control like an Xbox controller that I found. So going back to just 2 or 4 buttons has been awesome. And when I saw that and heard that for the first time,
I actually got one right here. The old boy. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Now you're in the WWE, a couple of the 2K games.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
It was pretty cool. I actually had been making the game like from like 2014 on. So like there was a few of the games before that where technically I'm in the game, like my DNA is in the game, but I'm just not an official character. So you could find moves and things of me in the Creator Wrestler bin because they had put it all in there, because I was doing motion capture for all these guys. And that's sort of actually how my character came about, because during the Cruiserweight Classic, I remember sitting with Drew Gulak, he's a good friend of mine, and we were sitting and watching some of the other matches in Full Sail in the theater. And he said, you know, he was telling me he really liked my match. I said, you know, likewise, everybody's killing it. He said, yeah, but he's like, you just have this way about moving. He's like, if you look like a video game character, like if we were all in like a Street Fighter game, you would be the character I'd want to play as. And I was like, oh, thank you. That's a huge compliment. And that had usually been a source of criticism my whole career, is that you're too soft, you make things look too perfect, and it's kind of like the whole Muhammad Ali thing, like you look too pretty, it doesn't look real. And I just got, you know, you do this for like 20 years, you get tired of hearing that, because it's like, that's who I am, dude. Like, just get over it. Like, Michael Jordan dunks, like, don't tell him not to dunk. Like, don't tell me not to don't tell Michael Jackson not to dance the way he does. That's just how it is. Like, so I was like, you know, maybe he's onto something. So I thought I should be a video game character, because I already make the video game. So I just said, you know, so when I got to be in it, it was really cool, because it was like, you know, I had been contributing to this game for years. I just thought it was awesome.
To kind of go off on a tangent here on the Nintendo video game thing, the original Pro Wrestling, have you played that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Who's your go-to guy?
Well, me and me and Brian used to always really joke about King Slender.
Okay.
Because of the name. We actually, at one point in the gym, way back, like the time we were talking about in New Japan Dojo, we used to mess around in the gym, and he tried to convince me he could be Starman. And he tried to learn he tried to show me he can do every single one of the moves, and he'll eventually be Starman. And he could, which is crazy. He could do it. So
he could do the lockup right into the drop kick. Oh wow.
So I remember the one that I really tried to call BS on was, he's like, I can just do the broad jump standing shooting star. And I was like, no, you can't. And he did. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. I don't know if he could do it now. I mean, at the time, we were both really young and maybe different levels of athleticism. But yeah, we had a few favorites in that game.
I would always pick Fighter Hayabusa, because he could do that back brain kick without having to lock up. Which
I always just thought it was cool because of the name.
Yeah, the Hayabusa. Yeah, it was that was so cool. But you don't see that anymore. I don't see like the Bad News Brown, the Ghetto Blaster.
I know.
I don't see the atomic drop. I don't see it. You know, you see like the evolution.
Oh, I'm all about the atomic drop, man. As much as I can stay off the mat, I'm all about that.
Awesome. So what Wrestling Travel does, and we talked a little bit before, obviously we travel, we bring fans from around the world to their favorite wrestling events, not just here in the US. We just, our last trip was to Wrestle Kingdom in Japan. What are some of the, you've been all over, but what are some of your favorite cities that you've been able to wrestle in?
Oh gosh. I mean, Tokyo's one. I get asked often about if I had a dream match, what would it be, and it's kind of hard to pick one. I've never really had that sort of mindset, but usually I would. Lately, I've been picking Ray, just because, you know, he's kind of almost done, and I think I've started to appreciate him more with age, like just his longevity and what he's meant to the business and everything. And if I did get to wrestle Ray again anyway, because we had wrestled in the tag once, but if I had a match with him, I would want to do it in Tokyo. I just feel like that's one of the best places I've ever wrestled is Tokyo. And Mexico City's another. A sold out arena Mexico is honestly the greatest feeling in the world. A Friday night in Arena Mexico is the greatest atmosphere I've ever been in, and to this day it still is. Like, nothing beats that. I really like New York. I like New York because it can be really divisive. I mean, they'll tell you exactly what they feel about you. Like, there's been times where I've been flat booed out of arenas because of how they feel. But that's great. It creates a great atmosphere. But they have this kind of like separation of respect for you still, because, you know, they've also would tell me on the way out that, like, you know, that New York is like my second home, and that it's like accepted there. And so like I love atmospheres like that that are so rowdy. And obviously I love Los Angeles. I'm from Los Angeles, and they're more laid back, but they also have a very real way of telling you how they feel. I mean, this is a city that booed Magic Johnson and Kobe Bryant when they felt like they just didn't approve. They don't just universally love anybody. So I love my city for that reason too. It's like, I don't always get universal love even in my own city. And I love places that kind of are real that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I just spoke with Matt Taven earlier today, and he said virtually the same thing about a Friday night in Mexico City with that crowd.
It's really, it's unreal. I can't, like, if I had to pick a wrestling heaven, like a wrestling purgatory, then it would be a Friday night at Arena Mexico every night forever. Like there's no better atmosphere than that.
This one's going to be kind of one of those questions that I would hate to answer, but I get to ask, and you can bypass anything because we're just casual here. I don't want to ask you, favorite opponent or something like that, but do you have a handful of matches that the average guy sitting here stuck in a lockdown, if we wanted to look at some of your favorite matches, could you give us a couple that you've had? And I realize that's like picking out your favorite kid, but is there a few that kind of stand out? And you can just
Sort
tell
of.
me to shut up too.
No, it's I guess it's unique for me because like at I was gonna say early age, but early wrestling age, one of the most important pieces of advice I ever was given, I've been given it twice by two different people, once by Piper, another time by Scott Norton. And they both told me to just, when you're done in the ring, you let it go. So I never really kind of go back and watch anything. I just let it go. Because I used to ask, like anybody would, you ask for advice and you're really hungry. You don't want to make mistakes. You want to correct things. And I would ask them, like, did you see this? Did you see that? What can I do better? And they'd tell me, you've reached a level and an age where you should know. Like, you should know immediately if you made a mistake. You don't got to ask us about it. You're just asking just to ask. Don't ask just to ask. You don't have to, like, let it. And if you made a mistake, you know what it is. So let it go. Do better tomorrow because you got 1,000 more. So it's hard because I usually don't dwell enough on matches to kind of have a lot of favorites. But I feel like, rounds 2 through 5 in the Cruiserweight Classic are obviously ones like, for me, that was like the summer of 2016 for me was, I don't know that I'll ever hit that wavelength again. Like I was kind of knocking out the park. I mean, as far as how I felt like I was killing it every night for, most of that year. And I don't know that I'll ever be that good again. I mean, just some guys get hot like that, that's sort of like a Jordan playoff run or something, or like Sean's 96, like it's just one of those things where I just was on every match. It just felt like great. Me and Gargano, me and Swan, me and Ibushi, me and Metallic. So I like those. Arena Mexico, when I was 18, the Havana Brothers versus Virus Volador and Ricky Marvin. That was a feud we had in CMLL. And it sort of changed. And that was back in 2003. It sort of changed the way that a lot of international wrestling became westernized, because we were doing a lot of American style stuff in Mexico, but we were also doing a lot of stuff that wasn't popular yet, but now has become popular, like, flying arm bars, flying knee bars, and, octopus stretches and things like that. Stuff that it's not that they didn't exist. We didn't invent them, but that wasn't like a trend. And then it became a trend because I think a lot of guys were seeing the way that we could dress it up, and it became part of, common generation now. So some of those are like my favorites, I think, that I've been a part of, just because they sort of meant a lot to history in certain ways, I guess. I don't know. Everybody likes to think that they contribute something. And I felt like those were times when I contributed to the community.
Very cool. The current situation that we're in, the last couple questions here, the empty arena matches that are kind of going on, I'm not sure how much you pay. I mean, it's really showing that the fan is quite a bit of the experience. The cinematography matches, I'm not sure if you got a chance to watch, like the
a little bit, yeah.
I'm old school, So I didn't want to like them. And then kind of with the Money in the Bank, I thought, man, people are doing whatever they can right now with the current situation that I need to lighten up. But your thoughts on some of those cinematography matches or just matches in empty arenas?
I mean, like I thought Lucha Underground was one of the greatest like concepts in wrestling because it didn't feel like pro wrestling. You know, they shot things very cinematically, and for years before that, like myself, Rocky Romero, one of our old coaches too, like we used to think, man, it would be great to make a show that was like a wrestling drama, and like it wasn't, like it didn't even include wrestling. You would just show everything but the wrestling, and it was shot very cinematic. And so when Lucha Underground did their thing a few years back, I thought, man, this is incredible. I've always wanted to see something like this. And so now with stuff like the Boneyard match, or you know, I mean, Bray Wyatt had done a few of these types of things in the recent years too, and not that they're all equally as entertaining as the next one or the previous one, um, but I do think that even the even with hits and misses, even including the misses, like it's still such an interesting concept that it's still a breath of fresh air for now, you know. And I've been part of some of these like empty studio matches too with Impact, and so it does really change completely the philosophy of how we work as performers. You know, it changes everything about it. So, I mean, it's kind of like trying to play quarterback in a football game, and like you change the rules about first downs and like play clocks, like it would change the game, you know. So not having a crowd definitely changes literally the mechanics of what we do. But the cinematic matches are, I mean, I like them a lot. I'm old school, but I like them a lot.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea that at the WWE headquarters that Doink the Clown is just hanging out there every day and everything. So it was cool. And then WrestleMania when Kevin Owens jumped off the sign, I'm thinking, man, to do that without that adrenaline from the crowd was
Oh
to
yeah,
me
it's
that's
those types of,
awesome.
yeah, those types of things. That's the worst thing ever. I mean, it made me think of mocap when I do motion capture for the WWE video game. Like the TLC matches, for example, I would have to motion capture like the Jeff Hardy spear off the thing. And so it would be 8 a.m. no in an empty studio, no crowd, just the WWE ring and a bunch of sensors. And I'd have to hang from this like 18-foot thing and get speared and onto the ring. And it's like I wouldn't really want to do that in front of 50,000 people, but like I'm doing it in front of 6 people that are just trying to program this thing, and I got to do it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I was gonna say, set it back up, do it again.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when I see stuff like Kevin's dive or whatever, and in that type of atmosphere, it's like, oh man, there's nothing harder than working up the nerve to do that in that situation.
Crazy. So, well, I'll let you go because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But the last thing I kind of want to know, and I want everybody watching this to know, is um, how do we keep up with you? What are you doing? What are your social media tags? What are where can we get some TJP merch? What's up? What's coming up next? Because hopefully we're going to see you have live wrestling relatively soon. I'm hoping. But in the meantime,
Yeah.
what can we do to keep up with you?
Well, my socials are pretty easy. I pretty much only have, you know, Instagram and Twitter. They're both at Mega TJP. Um, I had I had my schedule in my web shop up at detonationkick.com. The website's still up, but obviously right now there's not much of a touring schedule. So, but you can find all of my store merchandise. I merge them all with my pro wrestling tees. So if you go to prowrestlingtees.com/TJP, you could find everything, you know, from retro designs and Detonation Kick merch and all that stuff. And then I just started streaming again on Twitch. I had my account had been collecting dust for a couple of years because I got a little busy last couple of years just working a lot more. And so now you could find me on Twitch again. It's twitch.tv, also at megatjp. And then that's pretty much it.
Last question, just because I'm old and somebody else may be older than me, but the Twitches were more for gaming. Is that kind of where I'm at.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is, and I think this is the best way to put it, especially for like old school gamers. So if you're an old school gamer, you don't really know what Twitch is. Think about it like this: when you were growing up and you watch somebody playing like Resident Evil, right? You're hanging out at a friend's house, you're sleeping over, and one guy's playing Final Fantasy or Resident Evil, and everybody else is watching. You kind of get into watching them play, or you're watching a No Mercy tournament in like a living room or something like that, and you get into watching them play. So Twitch, it started as a way to kind of broadcast these games so you could watch people play, and then you could get your own account. Now it's grown into where you can stream content that is anything. Some people stream content of them just drawing pictures or making art, cooking, cleaning the house. I don't know, whatever's entertaining. But primarily it's for gaming footage. You can watch people play games, and in my case, that's what it is. So I'll put up polls and different games, and people can vote for what they want to see, and I'll play them.
Very cool. Well, we'll look forward to the Twitch of TJP cleaning his house very soon. That will get a lot of views. But hey, man, I want to thank you for joining us. We can't wait for wrestling to get back and watch wrestling. But in the meantime, we're going to keep track of everything you're doing on Twitch. So TJP, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.